Lieutenant Olivia Reeves had always dreamed of being among the stars, but not like this. The emergency lights in her scout ship's cockpit flashed crimson as she fought against the controls, the vessel plummeting through the atmosphere of an uncharted world. Warning klaxons screamed in her ears as the ship's hull temperature climbed to dangerous levels. Mayday, Mayday! This is Scout Ship Delta 7, requesting immediate assistance. Her voice remained steady despite the chaos around her. The ship's communication system crackled with static, her only reply. The deep space research vessel that had deployed her was light years away by now, continuing its mission to map the outer reaches of known space. The planet's strange purple atmosphere whipped past her viewport, the ground rushing up to meet her with terrifying speed. Olivia engaged the emergency landing protocols, but the ship's systems were failing one by one. The impact was inevitable. "Computer, log final coordinates," she commanded, strapping herself in tighter. "And initiate crash procedures." The ground came up fast. Too fast. The last thing Olivia remembered was the screech of tearing metal and a blinding flash of light. When consciousness returned, it came in waves. First, the smell organic, alien, like wet earth mixed with something sweet and metallic. Then the sounds, strange, chittering calls of unseen creatures and the gentle rustle of vegetation in the wind. Finally, pain, a dull ache throughout her body, but nothing seemed broken. Olivia forced her eyes open. The cockpit had been torn open like a tin can, exposing her to the alien world's atmosphere. Her first instinct was to check her environmental suit's integrity. Miraculously, it was intact. The air composition readings on her wrist display showed breathable levels of oxygen, though with higher concentrations of noble gases than Earth normal. She unstrapped herself and climbed out of the wreckage, her military training taking over. First priority, assess the situation. The crash had carved a long scar through a forest of strange, iridescent trees. Their bark seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns, and their leaves shimmered with an almost metallic quality. The sky above was a perpetual twilight of purple and green, lit by the dim red dwarf star this planet orbited. The ship's emergency beacon was damaged beyond repair. The quantum communicator, her only link to Earth, was scattered in pieces across the crash site. Olivia did a quick inventory of her survival gear, a plasma knife, water purifier, medical kit, and enough emergency rations for maybe 2 weeks if she stretched them. "Well, Reeves," she muttered to herself, "looks like those survival courses are about to pay off." She spent the next few hours salvaging what she could from the wreck. The ship's solar cells could still provide power for her basic equipment, and she managed to recover some useful pieces of technology. As the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows through the forest, Olivia knew she needed to find shelter. That's when she heard it, a low, rhythmic drumming in the distance. It could have been natural, but something about its regularity suggested intelligence. Against her better judgment, but knowing she had few options, Olivia decided to investigate. She moved through the forest with practiced stealth, her years of scout training evident in every careful step. The drumming grew louder, accompanied now by what sounded like singing, if you could call it that. The voices were unlike anything she'd ever heard, resonating at frequencies that made her skin tingle. Through the trees, she caught her first glimpse of them. Humanoid, but definitely not human. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in what appeared to be naturally armored plates that shifted color like oil on water. Their eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the bioluminescence of the forest around them. They were gathered in a clearing, dozens of them, moving in synchronized patterns around a central fire that burned with strange, multicolored flames. Some kind of ritual, Olivia guessed, though its purpose was beyond her understanding. She watched, transfixed, until a twig snapped beneath her foot. The singing stopped. Every alien head turned in her direction, their eyes glowing in the dimming light. Olivia's heart pounded. She could run, but where to? This was their world, and she was the intruder. Making a decision that would change her life forever, Olivia stepped into the clearing, her hands raised in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The aliens moved with incredible speed, surrounding her in seconds. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate markings on their armor plates, approached her. To Olivia's surprise, they mimicked her gesture, raising their four-fingered hands. The leader tilted their head, examining her with those fascinating compound eyes. Then, they did something unexpected. They knelt down to her level and reached out with one hand, palm up. Olivia understood the invitation. With trembling fingers, she placed her hand in theirs. The alien's skin was warm and surprisingly smooth, despite its armored appearance. A low humming sound emanated from the gathered crowd, approval, perhaps. The leader spoke, their voice a complex harmony of tones that seemed to resonate in Olivia's chest. She couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was being offered sanctuary. As the alien sun set completely, the forest came alive with bioluminescence, bathing everything in ethereal light. Olivia looked back in the direction of her crashed ship, knowing that her survival and perhaps something far more important now depended on her ability to bridge the gap between two very different species. The leader gently tugged her hand, guiding her toward their settlement visible through the trees. Structures rose organically from the forest floor, seeming to grow from the very trees themselves, glowing with the same bioluminescent light. As Olivia walked among them, she realized that this was more than just a matter of survival now. She was about to become the first human to truly live among an alien civilization. She had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, about humanity, and about what it truly means to be part of a community among the stars. Time moved differently on this world. The red dwarf star's eternal twilight made it difficult for Olivia to track the passing of days, but she estimated 2 local weeks had passed since her crash landing. The Valari, as she had learned to call them, had integrated her into their community with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Their settlement, which they called Nixhaven in her closest approximation of their harmonic language, was a marvel of biological engineering. The structures weren't built so much as grown, carefully cultivated from living tissue that responded to sonic frequencies the Valari could produce naturally. Olivia's quarters were a pod-like chamber high in one of the larger tree structures, its walls pulsing with gentle bioluminescence that adjusted to her circadian rhythm. Learning their language was her greatest challenge and triumph. The Valari communicated through a complex combination of harmonics, color shifts in their armor plates, and subtle movements. Their chief linguist, whom she called Resonance for their particularly melodic voice patterns, worked with her daily. They had an almost childlike fascination with her simpler, linear way of speaking. Your words, Resonance harmonized one day, their color patterns shifting to indicate curiosity. They travel only through air. Ours travel through everything. They placed a hand against a nearby wall, and the entire structure hummed in response. Olivia was beginning to understand that the Valari's relationship with their environment went far deeper than she had initially realized. They didn't just live in the forest, they were part of it. Their bioluminescent patterns matched those of the trees, their movements synchronized with the natural rhythms of their world. Not everyone welcomed her presence. Tempest, one of the tribe's hunters, regarded her with obvious distrust. Their armor plates remained consistently dark when near her, a sign of disapproval in Valari culture. The soft one cannot survive here, they would harmonize to others, their tones sharp and discordant. She will bring the attention of the shadow stalkers. Olivia learned about the shadow stalkers during her third week. They were apex predators that moved through the forest's canopy, their bodies able to bend light around them, making them nearly invisible. The Valari's natural armor was an evolutionary response to these creatures, but Olivia had no such protection. Her opportunity to prove herself came during a routine gathering expedition. She accompanied Resonance and several others to harvest luminous fruits from the higher branches of the forest canopy. The Valari moved effortlessly through the trees, their bodies naturally adapted to the vertical environment. Olivia relied on the climbing gear she had salvaged from her crash site, modified with Valari biotechnology. The attack came without warning. A shadow stalker, larger than any the Valari had described, dropped from above. Its crystalline claws gleamed in the bioluminescent light as it landed between Olivia and the rest of the group. Tempest, who had been watching her from nearby, called out a warning, but it was too late. The creature lunged, but Olivia's military training kicked in. She rolled beneath its strike, noting how its movements disturbed the bioluminescent patterns in the air, a tell that could be used to track it. The Valari moved to help, but another shadow stalker appeared, cutting them off. The patterns. Olivia called out in her best approximation of Valari harmonics. Watch how they break. She demonstrated, tracking the nearly invisible predator by the way it disrupted the forest's natural light show. Her plasma knife hummed to life in her hand, its energy blade casting a harsh blue glow. The shadow stalker struck again, but this time Olivia was ready. She ducked under its attack and drove her knife into a gap she had noticed in its crystalline armor. The creature screamed, a sound that shattered several nearby luminous fruits and retreated into the canopy. The second shadow stalker, faced with coordinated resistance from the Valari, soon followed. As the danger passed, Olivia found herself surrounded by her alien companions, their armor plates pulsing with new patterns she had never seen before. You see differently, Tempest harmonized, their tone carrying unexpected respect. Perhaps this is valuable. Their armor plates shifted to a warmer hue, the first time they had displayed such colors in her presence. That evening, the Valari held a ceremony. Olivia was presented with a piece of their living armor, a bioengineered symbiote that would bond with her skin, providing protection while allowing her to participate more fully in their color-based communication. The process of bonding was uncomfortable, but as the armor settled into place, she felt more connected to this alien world than ever before. You understand now, Resonance harmonized as they watched the armor sync with her body's rhythms. Our ways are not about dominance, but harmony. The forest, the creatures, even the shadow stalkers, all have their place in the great song. Olivia traced the patterns that now flowed across her new armor, matching the bioluminescent rhythms of the forest around her. I think I'm beginning to, she replied, her words accompanied by a ripple of colors that expressed her gratitude and acceptance. That night, As she sat in her podchamber watching the eternal twilight through the translucent walls, Olivia reflected on how much had changed. She was no longer just surviving on this alien world, she was becoming part of its complex symphony of life. Her thoughts drifted to Earth, to the rescue she still hoped would eventually come, but the urgency of that hope had diminished. The armor pulsed gently against her skin, adapting to her emotions, and for the first time since the crash, Olivia felt truly at home among the stars. The living armor had become a second skin to Olivia over the past 3 months, its patterns now as much a part of her expression as her words. She had learned to modulate its bioluminescent signals, though her accent, as resonance called it, still marked her as different. The real test of her integration into Valari society, however, was approaching: the Great Hunt. Once every cycle of their binary moons, the Valari conducted a ritual hunt that was equal parts spiritual journey and survival necessity. They tracked the migration of the crystal herds, massive creatures that moved through the forest like living mountains, their bodies a maze of crystalline formations that stored the forest's bioluminescent energy. The hunt is not about killing, Elder Harmony explained during the preparation ceremony. There are more shifting in complex patterns that spoke of ancient traditions. It is about maintaining balance. The crystal herds would drain too much light from the forest if left unchecked. We take only what is necessary. Olivia sat in the preparation circle with other hunters, including Tempest, who had become, if not exactly a friend, then at least a respected colleague. The living armor they all wore pulsed in synchronization as they shared the hunt songs, ancient harmonies that told of past hunts and the wisdom gained from them. "The soft one, Olivia, will join my hunting party," Tempest announced, their harmonics carrying both authority and challenge. Several others shifted their colors in surprise. It was rare for a newcomer to be invited into one of the primary hunting groups, let alone by someone who had initially been so opposed to their presence. The preparation lasted 3 days. Olivia learned the traditional hunt songs, her voice joining the complex harmonies that made the forest itself resonate in response. She studied the migration patterns of the crystal herds, understanding how they moved through the bioluminescent forest like rivers of living light. The morning of the hunt arrived with a rare astronomical event, both moons aligned, casting double shadows through the forest canopy. The hunting parties moved out in formation, their armor patterns dimmed to blend with the underbrush. Olivia stayed close to Tempest, watching how they read the subtle signs of the herd's passage, broken crystal formations, disturbed light patterns, and harmonics too deep for human ears but detectable through her living armor. They found the herd at the edge of the Singing Cliffs, where the forest met a vast expanse of crystalline formations that hummed with stored energy. The crystal beasts were even more magnificent than Olivia had imagined, each one the size of an earth elephant, their bodies a network of transparent crystal through which bioluminescent energy flowed like blood. "Remember," Tempest harmonized softly, their patterns rippling with cautionary yellows, "we seek only the one that leads them to excess. Watch their harmonics, the greedy one will be out of sync with the others." Olivia let her armor's sensitivity extend to its maximum, feeling the rhythms of the herd flow through her. There, one creature moved differently, its crystal formations growing more aggressively, draining more energy than the others. The herd's destroyer, the one that would lead them to consume too much if left unchecked. The hunt itself was like a dance. The Valari moved in perfect coordination, their harmonics herding the crystal beasts into natural formations that separated their target from the others. Olivia found her role instinctively, using her smaller size to slip through gaps the larger Valari couldn't, maintaining the circle of pressure around their quarry. The critical moment came when the target beast, panicked and isolated, charged toward a gap in their formation. Olivia stood her ground, her armor pulsing with a counter-harmony that made the creature hesitate just long enough. Tempest's hunting lance struck true, its specialized tip sending resonant frequencies through the beast's crystalline body. The creature's light dimmed gradually, its energy dispersing back into the forest in a controlled release rather than a catastrophic shattering. As the rest of the herd moved on, the hunting party gathered around their fallen quarry. The harvesting ritual was complex and beautiful, each hunter placing their hands on the crystal formations, their harmonics guiding the distribution of stored energy back into the forest's ecosystem. When it was Olivia's turn, she felt something unexpected. Through her contact with the crystal beast, she sensed echoes of earth, blue skies, ocean waves, the rhythm of her home world pulsing beneath the alien harmonics. Tears rolled down her cheeks, catching the bioluminescent light. "You hear the deep songs," Elder Harmony said later, during the celebration feast. "Few achieve such resonance in their first hunt. Perhaps it is because you carry two worlds within you now." The feast lasted well into the artificial night, with songs and stories shared through complex harmonics that made the very air shimmer. Olivia's contribution to the hunt songs would now become part of their oral tradition, the story of an alien who learned to move between worlds. "When I first crashed here," Olivia confided to Tempest as they watched the celebrations, "I thought I was lost. Now I'm not sure what that word means anymore." Tempests are more rippled with understanding. "Perhaps being lost is how we find new ways of belonging," they harmonized, their patterns forming the complex symphony that Olivia now recognized as the expression of a profound truth. The Great Hunt had changed something fundamental in Olivia's relationship with the Valari. She was no longer merely a curiosity or a guest, she had become part of their world's intricate balance. Yet as she watched the double moons through the bioluminescent canopy, she couldn't help but wonder, if rescue ever came, which world would she choose? 6 months had passed since Olivia's first great hunt, and the forest's eternal twilight had become as natural to her as Earth's sunrises once were. Her living armor had evolved with her, developing unique patterns that blended human and Valari characteristics. But peace in the forest was about to be shattered by an ancient truth. The first warning came during a routine forest song ceremony. The harmonics that usually flowed smoothly through the settlement's living architecture suddenly became discordant. Elder Harmony's armor flashed with alarm patterns Olivia had never seen before. "The deep songs are changing," the elder harmonized, their patterns showing distress. "Something stirs beneath the ancestors' gates." The ancestors' gates were considered sacred ground, a mysterious complex of crystalline ruins that lay 3 days' journey from Nixhaven. The Valari spoke of them in whispered harmonics, believing them to be relics of their species' ancient past. No one had ventured inside them for generations. "The Shadow clans are moving," Tempest reported the next day, their hunting party returning early from patrol. Their armor rippled with urgent patterns. "They gather at the ruins in numbers we haven't seen in living memory." The Shadow clans were Valari who had rejected the harmonious way of life, choosing instead to live in the darkest parts of the forest. They modified their living armor to absorb light rather than transmit it, making them living shadows that struck fear even in the hearts of their cousins. Olivia found herself in the council chamber as the tribe's leaders debated their response. Her unique perspective as an outsider had earned her a place in such discussions, though she rarely spoke. This time, however, something nagged at her military-trained mind. "The timing isn't random," she said, her armor pulsing with thoughtful glues. "The shadow clans are organized, coordinated. They're not just gathering, they're preparing for something." Elder Harmony's patterns shifted in agreement. "The ruins hold secrets. Our ancestors left warnings in the deep songs about a great power sleeping there. If the shadow clans have found a way to access it." The council's decision was unanimous. They needed to reach the ruins before the shadow clans could enact whatever plan they had conceived. A small team would have the best chance of moving undetected. Olivia, Tempest, and Resonance were chosen to accompany Elder Harmony. They traveled through the forest's highest canopy, using paths known only to the eldest hunters. Olivia's modified armor allowed her to keep pace with the Valari, its enhanced properties helping her navigate the vertigo-inducing heights. As they drew closer to the ruins, the forest's natural bioluminescence began to dim, as if the very light was being drawn away. The ancestors' gates rose before them on the morning of the third day, massive crystalline structures that seemed to pierce the purple sky. Ancient Valari script covered their surface, glowing faintly with stored energy. But it was what lay at their base that caused the team to pause in shock. Dozens of Shadow Clan warriors moved among the ruins, their dark armor absorbing the ancient light. They had constructed some kind of resonating chamber, its crystal matrices pulsing with dangerous energy. "They seek to awaken it," Elder Harmony harmonized in horror. "The world song engine. Our ancestors built it to control the forest's energy, but its power proved too great, too dangerous to control." Olivia studied the Shadow Clan's setup through salvaged optics from her crash. "Those energy patterns, they're similar to my ship's quantum drive. They're not just trying to control the forest's energy, they're trying to weaponize it." A plan formed quickly. The team split up, with Resonance and Elder Harmony moving to create a diversion while Olivia and Tempest infiltrated the ruins. The Shadow Clans had forced open an ancient doorway, revealing corridors that thrummed with dormant power. Inside, Olivia's military background and Tempest's hunting skills proved a perfect combination. They moved silently through the crystalline halls, avoiding Shadow Clan patrols. The architecture was unlike anything Olivia had seen in the living forest. This was technology, advanced beyond even Earth's capabilities, but clearly designed by science rather than grown through harmony. They found the central chamber just as the Shadow Clans began their activation sequence. The World Song engine was a massive crystalline sphere, its surface covered in intricate circuits that pulsed with building power. Shadow Clan technicians worked at ancient control panels, their dark armor absorbing the increasing energy output. If they succeed, Tempest harmonized quietly, they could drain the light from half the forest. Millions of creatures would die. Olivia's mind raced, analyzing the engine's structure. "The crystals," she whispered. "They're like the ones in the crystal herds, but engineered. They're meant to channel energy, not just store it." Her living armor tingled as she reached out to touch the ancient machine's surface. The Shadow Clans are trying to force it awake, but that's not how it was meant to work. Understanding flowed between them through their armor's connection. The Valari's ancestors hadn't built the engine to control the forest through force, they had created it to work in harmony with it. The Shadow Clan's attempts to dominate it would lead to catastrophe. What happened next would become legend in Valari song. As the Shadow Clans initiated their final sequence, Olivia and Tempest stepped into the open. Their armor began to pulse with the hunt songs, the ancient harmonies that had guided the crystal herds for generations. Other voices joined them, resonance and elder harmony had arrived with reinforcements from nearby friendly tribes. The chamber filled with song, not to control the engine, but to remind it of its purpose. The shadow clans fought back, their dark armor trying to absorb the harmonics, but they had forgotten the most fundamental truth of the forest: true power came from connection, not control. The world song engine responded to the harmonies, its crystals resonating with the combined voices of those who sought balance rather than dominion. Energy coursed through the chamber, not in the destructive wave the shadow clans had intended, but in a spectacular display of light and sound that replenished rather than drained. In the aftermath, as the shadow clans retreated in disarray, Olivia stood with her companions in the ancient chamber. The engine hummed softly now, restored to its original purpose as a custodian of the forest's harmony rather than a weapon of destruction. You understand our ways better than those who were born to them, Elder Harmony said. There are more patterns showing deep appreciation. Perhaps this is why the forest's song brought you to us. Olivia touched the living armor that had become part of her, feeling the harmonics of two worlds flowing through her. Sometimes, she replied, her patterns forming the complex expression of a universal truth. We have to lose our way to find a better one. The rescue signal caught Olivia completely by surprise. She was deep in the forest with Tempest, teaching younger Valari the hunt songs, when her salvaged emergency beacon suddenly sparked to life. The sound of human voices, distorted but clear, broke through the forest's harmonies for the first time in 4 years. Lieutenant Olivia Reeves, this is the UES Hyperion. We've detected your emergency beacon. Do you copy? The younger Valaris are more flickered with confusion at the strange sounds, but Tempest's patterns showed understanding and something deeper, a complex emotion their language had no simple harmony for. They had both known this day might come, but knowing hadn't made it easier. I copy, Hyperion, Olivia responded, her voice cracking slightly as she used spoken English for the first time in months. Her living armor rippled with conflicting patterns that reflected her inner turmoil. 4 years overdue for pickup. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The Hyperion's shuttle would take 3 days to reach her location, giving Olivia time to what? Say goodbye? Explain. How could she explain everything that had happened, everything she had become? News spread through the forest's harmonic network. Valari from neighboring settlements made the journey to Nixhaven. There are more patterns telling stories of the human who had learned their ways, who had helped protect the ancestors' gates, who had become one of them. Elder Harmony found her the night before the shuttle's arrival, sitting in her podchamber, surrounded by the few possessions she had accumulated, ceremonial crystals from her first hunt, harmonizing tools she had learned to craft, and the original emergency beacon that had finally brought rescue. Your people's songs call you home, the elder harmonized softly, their patterns showing wisdom and acceptance. But home is not always where we begin. Olivia's armor rippled with the complexity of her emotions. When I crashed here, all I wanted was rescue. Now, she touched the living armor that had become part of her. How do I choose between two worlds? Perhaps, Elder Harmony suggested, their patterns forming the complex symphony that represented their deepest teachings. You are not meant to choose. The forest's song is strongest when it combines many harmonies. The morning of the shuttle's arrival brought clear skies, the binary moons still visible as pale ghosts in the purple daylight. The entire tribe gathered in the clearing where Olivia had first encountered them 4 years ago. The shuttle's descent scattered bioluminescent spores into the air, creating a curtain of light between the two worlds, Earth technology and Valari nature. The shuttle's door opened, and human figures in environmental suits emerged. They stopped short at the sight of the assembled Valari, and especially at the sight of Olivia, her living armor pulsing with welcome patterns that bridged both species' ways of greeting. Lieutenant Reeves, one of the rescue team, asked hesitantly, Are you all right? Olivia smiled, letting her armor translate the expression into harmonics for her Valari family. I'm more than all right, she replied. I'm exactly where I need to be. The rescue team was bewildered by her appearance, but their mission was clear: bring her home. As they explained the situation, however, Olivia's mind was already racing ahead. The Valari's biotechnology, their harmonious way of life, their ability to live in balance with their environment, these were things humanity needed to understand. Not to exploit, but to learn from. She turned to address both groups, the human rescue team and the Valari tribe. Her armor translated her words into harmonics as she spoke. I'm proposing something unprecedented, she began. Not a rescue, but an exchange. A chance to bridge our worlds. Over the next several hours, Olivia laid out her vision. She would return to Earth, yes, but not permanently. She would serve as an ambassador between the two species, helping to establish a proper diplomatic channel. The Valari's knowledge of biological harmony could help address Earth's environmental crisis, while human technology could help the Valari better protect their forest from threats like the Shadow Clans. The universe is too vast for any species to face it alone, she concluded, her armor pulsing with conviction. We are stronger in harmony. The response from both sides was cautious but optimistic. The rescue team's commander agreed to relay her proposal to Earth's authorities, while Elder Harmony's patterns showed approval of the possibility of sharing their wisdom with another world. As preparations began for her temporary departure, Tempest approached her one last time. You have changed us, they harmonized, their patterns showing deep respect. Your crash was not an accident. It was a harmony we needed. Olivia's armor rippled with affection and gratitude. I'll return, she promised, the patterns of her armor forming the most solemn oath in Valari culture. Some songs are too important to end. Standing in the shuttle's doorway, looking back at the bioluminescent forest and the gathered Valari, Olivia understood that her journey hadn't been about survival or rescue at all. It had been about finding a way to exist between worlds, to create harmony from difference, to turn an accident of fate into a bridge between stars. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying her toward her first world, Olivia's armor pulsed with the rhythm of her two hearts, one human, one Valari, beating in perfect harmony. The forest below seemed to pulse in response, its bioluminescent light a farewell and a promise. Some distances, no matter how vast, could be bridged by understanding. She was no longer Lieutenant Olivia Reeves, lost scout of Earth, nor was she simply a member of the Valari tribe. She had become something new, a harmony between worlds, a bridge across the stars, and living proof that the greatest discoveries often come not from seeking them, but from being willing to learn new ways of belonging.